My first time shooting Kodak 250D didn't go to plan when the lab developing the film had some water leak into their developing machine and create some green streaks across a lot of my images. But I still liked the overall look of the film, and so I wanted to give it another go. I took a few rolls with me as I travelled across New York, Boston, Acadia National Park and the Catskill Mountains. And of course, this set of rolls also had some issues. My ever-trusty Contax G1 seems to have developed a very consistent light leak across a portion of the frame. 95% of the images that I took on this trip are plagued with this issue, and it's a real shame because there's actually some really nice images that I would be a big fan of if they didn't have this light leak. But when I started this channel, I said that I would share the ups and the downs of film photography, and so I do still want to share these images with you. I'm going to talk you through the trip, share some photos from the 10 or so days that I spent traveling, and then just give a few thoughts on why I'm beginning to really love re-spooled 35mm Kodak 250D, despite the fact that I keep running into some issues. Let's get into it. So the trip started flying to New York City, where we immediately rented a car and drove up to Boston. Boston was just going to be a little stopover as our travels really started up at Acadia National Park. We spent one night here in Boston and then spent the next morning walking around the city, and that's where I started to take photos. This set here by the dock are some of my favourite photos from Boston. I really like the way the 250D renders the colour blue across these scenes, and despite it being quite harsh lighting, it actually gives quite a pleasing look. From here we drove up to Acadia National Park, where we spent a few days exploring different spots around the park, and I captured some images both in the park and in the area around where our hotel was. This photo of the view from our small little balcony is possibly my favourite from the entire trip. This is one of the instances that I really wish the light leaks weren't present. And from Acadia we then travelled to our final stop, which was a resort up in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. This place was an incredibly relaxing little stay. We hardly left the resort other than for a brief walk around a neighbouring town, where I did capture a couple of images of views across a river, but the majority of our time was spent on the hotel's beautiful and vast grounds. again, one final location that I really loved the images that I took was at this diner here, which was nearby. This set of photos I really loved, and I would have really liked to have seen what they would have looked like without the light leaks. The overall look of Kodak 250D is a pretty interesting one, as the scans that I was getting out of my home scanning setup were incredibly contrasty and saturated right off of the bat. All of these images I did some minor adjustments to, but not a vast amount of editing. They did tend to lean quite magenta, and so I did push a bit of green back into the images to get the colour and look that I was after. But the general contrast and saturation levels were so high that I just had to tweak the exposure of each negative slightly to get a really nice and desirable look. And the light leaks on the film also meant that Negative Lab Pro struggled a little bit with the conversion process. If I tried to convert the entire negative, it would often convert to a really blue image. I think trying to counteract the bright orangey red look of the light leak, and so I had to crop all of the images smaller, excluding the light leak from the frame, convert them all like that, and then reset the crop once the conversion process was complete. Overall, Kodak 250D is quickly becoming one of my favourite 35mm film stocks to shoot, despite the fact that both times I've worked with it, there's been issues with either the camera or the developing of the film that renders the final result pretty useless. I often use film emulation plugins, power grades and LUTs on my video work and my footage because I love trying to replicate and achieve that motion picture film look, and being able to shoot re-spooled 250D through my 35mm film cameras gives me that exact look that I'm after pretty much straight off the bat. I haven't been able to come close to this stylistic look in regards to colour, contrast and saturation shooting on any other film stock. It's certainly very different to me, and it's definitely not for every scenario. The more pastel and muted looks of films like Port 400 certainly have their benefits, and there's clearly a reason why they're so popular, but I've begun to really fall for the charms of this old Kodak motion picture film stock. And it's partly because of an interest in the look of this film stock that I've gone out and purchased a panoramic 35mm film camera. Now, it's not the uber expensive Hasselblad X-Pan or the Fuji TX1, both of which would set me back thousands and thousands of pounds, but it's a little Minolta Riva Panorama, or Minolta Ps as it's also known. I'm going to be shooting some rolls of 250D through this in the next couple of months, and will definitely be making a video on this camera and on shooting 250D in a panoramic aspect ratio in the near future. But that is going to be all for this one. I do hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to leave me a like, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and of course please do consider subscribing if you want to see any more of my content going forwards. Stay safe everyone, stay happy, and I'll see you in the next one.